Looks like I'm gonna need to cook again, I fear. Back when Squid Game Season 1 first released, I did a what-if style video on how certain total drama challenges could work if they were to adapt a more PG version of how that competition works. And I ended up soft predicting how the total drama version of Red Light Green Light could work, as the first episode of the Revival's second season did a twist on the game where Chef's grandmother threw pink paint-filled balloons at contestants if they were caught moving. I'm definitely not an inside agent, I just happened to take an unrelated vacation to Canada a couple years back. No correlation. Season 2 for Squid Game was always inevitable because of how quickly it became a cultural phenomenon around the world. Even my mom knows about it, and 95% of the shows she watches are reality TV, cooking, or dating shows. So as a follow-up to the first video, I wanted to take this one to discuss the new games and plot points in Squid Game Season 2 and how theoretical total drama episodes could work around it. Of course, there will be some notable spoilers about Squid Game Season 2 in this video, so if you don't want to be spoiled on those aspects, feel free to come back to this video after you've finished. But without further ado, let's get into it. So the general premise of Squid Game Season 2 follows the main character Sung Gi-hun, aka player 456, returning to the Squid Games as a player in hopes of trying to take the whole operation down from the inside. Which is something Total Drama has sort of done, but not exactly the same, in the sense that older characters have had to recompete in multiple seasons over the years, mainly the Gen 1 cast members. Owen in particular competing in 4 seasons total if you count the Redonkulous Race spinoff. Then you have the characters Topher and Scarlet from Pakatu Island, who wanted to take down or change the way things were run, but it was for their own personal gain rather than for the greater good like what 456 is striving for. Topher wanted to take over as the Total Drama host replacing Chris, while Scarlet was a secret evil genius who wanted to blow up the main island if Chris didn't give her the $1 million prize up front. The Red Light Green Light game also made a comeback as the first game to be played again, but obviously since the second season of the Revival did their own take on the game already, there's not much else to say about that one since it literally exists in its own unique way with the chef's grandmother thing. I just realized this while editing the video, but it's kind of funny how Total Drama and the second Red Light Green Light game both had players getting eliminated by bee interference. Obviously this is a complete coincidence, I just thought it was wild. Though if there were to be another one, knowing Chris's crazy ass, they could have done a more on-the-nose version where lasers are actually getting shot at the players. World Tour had 2 different instances where contestants had to avoid burning security lasers. Plus the cartoon logic and Toon Force in the show gets turned up to 11 at times to where I think the players who would get zapped probably wouldn't even be hurt for the long term. Because the game's frontman, aka Hwang Yin-ho, began to catch on to 456's overly helpful nature to the new players in Red Light Green Light, the following games would be changed to prevent him and the others from having a, quote-unquote unfair advantage. On top of that, just like his old master before him, the frontman would secretly join the games under the number 001, again, the same number as the previous head honcho. This served as the big twist and driving plot point of the season and worked quite well in my opinion. So with Chris McClane being the Total Drama frontman equivalent, I think there's a lot of potential content and funny interactions to be had if Chris was forced to partake in Total Drama challenges, even if just for a few times. The dynamic wouldn't have the same energy to it as the frontman being in the games, that's for sure. For one, nobody in Season 2 knew the true identity of the frontman besides his younger brother, plus everyone knows who Chris is, and quite frankly, they all hate him except Chef. So Chris forming alliances of any kind with other players if he were to be in the games would be extremely difficult because of how slim the pickings would be. If we're talking the newest generation, maybe Priya because she didn't seem to be bothered by Chris's insanity too much compared to others, or one of the hockey bros because they're not very bright. If we're talking older cast members, maybe Sierra, Katie and Sadie, Owen, or Lindsay, but even those guys have had their beef with Chris before. Most realistic outcome I'd see is Chris having just as bad, if not a worse time than Alejandro did in All-Stars, being targeted by his old enemies constantly, even if there were situations where he was objectively in the right. The second difference between the dynamics is because nobody knew who the frontman was nor what his true intentions were, he was able to manipulate others into becoming his allies, mainly 456 and pretending to join his plan to overthrow the Squid Game's high-ranking officers. At times, we as the audience were given the impression he might turn over a new leaf after spending time in the games again like old times, but in reality, he's still just as twisted as he was in the first season. In the case of Chris, he's got manipulative sides to him to where he'll try to pit contestants against each other for the sake of higher ratings, and most notably in Pakatu's finale with Sean, Jasmine, Sky, and Dave. However, it comes back to everyone already knowing about him, and he, had more power when he was doing that, like he was untouchable as the host. So the likely direction would be turning Chris more into one of the season punching bags, similarly to Sam, Ezekiel, Cody, or Scott. Getting voted off would be a blessing in disguise for him, if anything, because then he could just go back to his old gig in the celebrity world, unless him looking like a fool in the competition results in him getting fired or something. But at the same time, with how well Courtney was being treated in action, Chris could be getting even better treatment due to being the old host. The first new game introduced in Season 2 was the 6-legged pentathlon, where 5 players have their legs tied together and run a gauntlet of 5 mini-games that have to be completed in 5 minutes against another team of 5, with the losing team getting eliminated from existence, as is tradition.
As is, of course, the tradition.
Something like this could easily be implemented into a show like Total Drama, with the games themselves not really needing to change much. The game called Milk Caps or Pogs is basically a more Western version of Dakji, only using milk caps instead of folded paper squares. Flying Stone can be turned into, using a bowling ball to hit a single pin, or the old carnival ring on top of a bottle. Gongi could be turned into a game of jacks, since those two games are borderline identical. Spinning Top you could deadass keep the same, because I think I've played that exact game as a kid myself, and I don't live in South Korea. Finally, the game of Jegi, which uses an object similar to a shuttlecock from badminton, where players have to keep it up in the air continuously, could be replaced with the hacky sack game, which was popularized as its own thing in the West back in the 1970s by Mike Marshall and John Stahlberger. Of course, instead of the contestants getting unalived, they just wouldn't be immune to elimination and have to vote a single person off their team. A Total Drama Island Season 1 already did a similar challenge to this with the Tri-Arm Triathlon. Only difference was it was 3 pairs of 2 against each other, handcuffed to each other, and the games each of them did were spread out, timed individually rather than all at the same time in a gauntlet fashion. Total Drama's done gauntlet type challenges before, like the Food Fright Challenge in All-Stars or the Mad Skills Obstacle Course in Revenge of the Island, so a combination of the two could be a cool concept in my opinion. It might sound a little ableist here, so my apologies, but would having Z on your team in a game like this make any difference positively or negatively? Only reason I bring him up is because of the prosthetic leg, and the Revival series has done a few jokes about it. It feels like he'd be a prime contestant to partake in a game like that. Also, Jeff or Brody would be perfect for Jeggy. If you lose with them, you're dead weight, homie. The third game is called Mingle, and if you're not fighting for your life in this game, it's seen as an icebreaker type game where people will get into groups of a specific number of people, usually ranging from 2 to 6. If you're left without a group, then you're eliminated. Squid Game's take as people rushing into rooms with their groups, and if they're left out or there's too many people, you're done. The closest challenge Total Drama has done to this so far, I guess, is the Off the Hook challenge from the Revival second season. That challenge involved the remaining guys being put inside containers. They have to stay inside for a bit, albeit their worst fears are in there. If we end up getting a third season with the most recent cast, implementing the Mingle game as the first team merge challenge could be interesting. With how many times alliances had been formed, with many ending in betrayals over the many seasons of this show, it would be so free to set up a situation where 2 or more contestants formed an alliance that genuinely felt like it would go the distance, only for one of them to prioritize themselves at a point in Mingle where their old alliance buddy would be left out to dry, giving the traitor invincibility for the day, and the betrayed gets eliminated unfairly in the same episode. That's Total Drama 101 right there. It'd be perfect. If I ended up unintentionally predicting a future challenge again, that'd be so funny, I'm not gonna lie. Another interesting thing this season did was show us the perspective of how one becomes one of the shaped soldiers who oversee the different games. Total Drama's done similar mini plot lines with characters like Dakota becoming one of Chris's interns, but she completely hated every minute of that position. And then there was Noah, who worked for Chris too, so I guess there's that, but it wasn't while an actual season was going on. It was, kind of in between filming. Maybe Sarah could be one of his interns. I guess that could be funny. But as of right now, there hasn't been any announcements of a third season, and I haven't really had that much faith in that department either, since the second season of the Revival still has not been officially released in the States, despite the English dub being available in other regions for over a year now. Let's give a round of applause to dumbass corporations that kill shows' momentums for no reason. Woohoo! E minor, alright. Squid Game Season 2 was one of those seasons that didn't focus on as much on the skeptical of the games as Season 1, that's for sure. Only 3 main games total, with the first of the 3 being one that already existed. So by default, there's less to correlate to Total Drama, but the release of the newer seasons happening after Squid Game dropped allowed me to make other fun theories or connections that I wasn't able to make before. I'm very much looking forward to Season 3 next year, because my one gripe with Season 2 was the ending felt very abrupt and unfinished to an extent. Not sure if there was some weird stuff going on behind the scenes with the production or what, but it felt like an abnormal amount of issues were still unresolved by the end of episode 7. Regardless, it was still a great watch overall. Also, if you'd want to watch another Total Drama Squid Game related video, Wicked Binge recently dropped a 20-minute video discussing which Total Drama character would perform the best in the various Squid Game games. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of Season 2 and how you think it could influence another season of Total Drama if we end up getting one. I'd love to know your thoughts. Quick thanks to my gold tier patrons, BFP4, Izzytorium, Draconish, and Agender Fox. You guys' support really means the world to me. And don't be a stranger to leaving a like down below and subscribing for more content like this in the future. But for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out, take care, and Happy New Year. Bye.